Hello and welcome to this very special episode of our NomadCast. I'm Paula Zogby, a research manager at Nomad, today at a different location, speaking a different language, but as usual with Danilo Igliori, chief economist at Nomad. Hi, Danilo.
Hi, Paula. I'm thrilled to be here.
Today we are at Nasdaq headquarters in New York City with Brandis DeSimone, Vice President and Head of Data Sales for the Americas at Nasdaq. We're going to explore the landscape of global financial markets through the lens of Nasdaq. So to begin this interview, Brandis, could you please introduce yourself and share a little bit of your journey at Nasdaq so far? And first, thank you for receiving us here.
First, I want to welcome you both to the Nasdaq market site. And for those that are listening and watching this, I want to welcome you to the crossroads of the world in Times Square, New York. Nasdaq moved into this space in 2000, and some of the legendary CEOs from some of our prominent Nasdaq-listed companies have crossed this very floor and have been in this exact space. So it really is a hall of legends here at the market site in Times Square. And for those that can look outside, we are literally at the crossroads of what we call the crossroads of the world on 42nd Street here in New York City. So welcome. As you both mentioned, my name is Brandis. I've been at NASDAQ for about 12 years, originally starting off in our IPO and listing business. So looking at companies that want to utilize the capital markets here in the US to raise money to invest back into their business by using the IPO process. I did that for about 8 years at NASDAQ and recently transitioned over into our data business. So kind of taking a different lens from the corporates who are listed on NASDAQ to the actual investors. The investors that are looking to, potentially invest in those corporates, get information on those corporates, tap into the growth and success of those corporates after they go public once they're listed on both NASDAQ and the entire US market ecosystem.
Oh, that's
very nice to meet you both, and welcome to NASDAQ.
Yeah, no, thank you for your time. So, people normally think of NASDAQ as another US stock exchange, but in fact, you do much more things, right? Could you just elaborate a little bit on the scope of NASDAQ nowadays?
Yeah. NASDAQ decided that we wanted to make this experience on investing more global and more fair by using technology. And so we established the first electronic quotation system back in 1971, which over time grew to become an actual trading system. And then in the mid-2000s, NASDAQ actually went public ourselves. And our growth, just as our listed companies are able to use that capital to grow their own companies, we did the exact same thing. We went public on our own exchange in 2005, and from there, we were able to do a lot of acquisitions, grow a lot of headcount, and really invest in our own company. And since then, we have made a lot of electronic innovations across not only the US markets, but markets around the globe. So NASDAQ owns and operates 3 engines, electronic trading engines in Canada.
All right.
We own and operate 3 electronic trading engines here in the US for equities and 6 for options. And then we actually acquired the Scandinavian markets, the Baltics and the Nordics, and we actually own and operate and run those engines on NASDAQ technology. The same idea, the same inception from 1971, where we thought, let's make this idea of investing in these markets more global, more accessible to everyone, more scalable. And so that technology that we use today to run about 20 plus exchanges that NASDAQ owns and operates, we actually license that same technology out around the world. B3 is a great example. They actually use the same technology, the same process that NASDAQ innovated on through the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s to run the B3 exchange.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
So about 120 exchanges around the world use the same technology that we use to run the mainframe NASDAQ engine, creating that accessibility around the world, globalization of access to markets using technology.
Yeah, since you spoke about global, at Nomad, one of our missions is to help Brazilian people to globalize their portfolios. So why is NASDAQ relevant to retail investors in Brazil?
I think that's a great question, but I think it also requires us to take another step back, right? If you look back 15 years ago, the amount of retail participation in the market was a sliver. today, retail participation, when you look at the US markets, is at around 50%.
Right.
So you take all the banks and broker dealers and you take, the hedge funds and all the asset managers, and you think that they're the lion's share of investing in the US market, but that's not true at all. Retail has some real power, some real financial capital behind their decisions, right? To really drive the markets and create the capital that corporates need to invest back into themselves. And it doesn't just stop with a US retail investor. So as we've seen retail start to climb and become more interested in the markets, it hasn't just stopped within the coastlines of the United States and Canada, right? We've seen that extend really dominantly into Brazil. We've seen a huge amount of growth and interest in the US markets in the Middle East. Asia has been a large growth engine for Asian retail investors wanting to invest in the US markets. So it's really become a global phenomenon. And how has that happened is the question. And it's really been a confluence of a couple of things at once. But mainly it's been technology.
Right.
So if you scale back 20 years ago, when I know I didn't even have a cell phone, right? And you look now at the fact that a teenager can sit in their house and code to an API using their cell phone, right? The amount of technology that young people have access to today and the pace of technology has created retail brokerage applications like Nomad, right? And so now someone in your home country, someone in Hong Kong, someone in Saudi Arabia can open up an app in their home language, right? Looking at information in their home currency, but because of technology, have access to the US capital markets. That didn't exist. It was impossible 20 years ago. But the evolution and explosion of technology has allowed globalization of retail access into the markets, and it's working, right? Companies like Nomad have created this, retail number to be at the 50% growth level to compete against the big banks and asset managers here in the US that traditionally really cornered the market, right? And so what does that mean? I mean, we look at, the top 10 most retail traded securities, retail stocks are listed on NASDAQ, right? And so we're trying to keep an eye on what retail's interested in, bringing access to those corporates to our retail investors, having conversations like this with you to make sure that your retail investors really feel like they are part of this entire flywheel ecosystem, because they are a huge component now, and we do not think it's going away.
Fantastic. Now, you're talking about technology, but there's something else that's been transforming the way we do business and interact with the markets as well, which is data. Right?
Sure.
So, how important is data for accessing markets, and what kind of data now is important for investing?
Sure, that's a great question, and I think it's a two-step. So first of all, the markets are moving faster than ever. Volumes coming out of the pandemic were at an all-time high, and they continue to be at elevated levels. Retail is participating. Overnight trading, pre-market and post-market trading has exploded, right? So it's not good enough to get the price of a stock on a piece of paper like they did downtown in 1971. You need access to the real-time market data. Historically, clients would even say, I'll take delayed data, 15 minutes delayed data, typically no costs, free data to access the US markets. But can you imagine getting the price of Tesla 15 minutes after it actually traded? The market moves too quickly now. So, retail investors, just like corporate investors, just like asset managers, rely on that real-time value of the data, because 15 minutes late at this point is yesterday's news. Right? With the evolution of social media and everything happening in your hand on your phone, it's more important than ever to have access to that real accurate data. That's step number one. That's the growth journey. You want access, you want to see what the price is of all of these companies that are circling around us. This is the NASDAQ 100 that's circling around our head. These are the top 100 non-financial companies that are listed on NASDAQ. So you want the price of Amazon, right? You want the price of ADP or Airbnb or Apple at your fingertip. And that was your first step in your journey. But I'm sure you're seeing this with Nomad's investors. They're getting more sophisticated, right? They're learning more about the markets, and they want more data to digest exactly why is Apple trading that way. Let me look at the fundamentals of Apple. what supply chain relationships does Apple have to other suppliers that may also be investment opportunities for me? So it's not just enough today to provide these retail investors with the price of a stock really fast in real time. As they become more sophisticated and more accustomed, as they're growing up investing now at the palm of their hand, they need more information to be able to really understand and make decisions. And that need for information continues to grow and grow. So it's the job of my team, running our sales team for the Americas for our data business for NASDAQ, to think 2 steps ahead. Okay, your retail investor is digesting and getting used to having this information at their fingertips. But in 2 years, what else are they going to want? What else are they going to need? We're seeing a huge evolution in retail investors becoming interested in fixed income. Why fixed income? Because fixed income now, you used to have to invest in an ETF that potentially held bonds, right? But you weren't actually invested in fixed income. Retail is now able to actually invest in fixed income. Why is that happening? Well, let's go back to globalization of the markets, right? You look at countries like Brazil, where your investors are so used to investing in fixed income that they question the US markets and say, well, why here and not there? I understand the value of investing in fixed income, high interest rates, right? Great rate of return. So the demand of what investors are seeing in other places and other markets is coming back and putting pressure on the US to start to become more adaptable to offer similar offerings. So what does my team then have to do? We need to make sure that we can offer firms like you access to the data for fixed income, so that way you can show your investors. So it's demand driven, globalized demand driven. Data needs to appear on your screen, and how can my team stay 2 steps ahead to be sure that we can provide that for when you decide to make that move, you can call us and we can give it to you right away versus us having to go and source it.
Fantastic.
So being 2 steps ahead, what do you think is next for self-directed retail investors in Brazil and global?
Well, I think we cannot end this conversation without mentioning AI.
Yeah.
Right, we have to. I think otherwise we'll get kicked out of the building. How will retail use AI in the future? What do we envision? Attention spans are short. Yes. Access to data is on the fly. But you know what else is really small? Real estate on your screen. Right? So we're seeing a competition in interest in accessing more content and more data as the retail investor gets smarter and smarter and wants to diversify into all sorts of things beyond equities, options, fixed income, alternative assets, for example, right? So they are demanding more and more access to different types of products that they can invest in, but the screen in their hand is not getting any larger. So how could we think about offering AI-driven analysis, AI-driven results, coming back to your retail investor to give them a summary of what they want to hear without having to take up all of that real estate on their phone? So, firms like Nomad taking in all this data and being able to serve it to your customer using AI in a way that they can digest the information without having them scroll down to a point where they're not going to scroll anymore. Right? So thinking about how we can help firms like you start to analyze the data that you will require and serve it back to your customer in a way that's actually helpful for them. That's what we're thinking about when we think about AI.
Fantastic. Now we're talking about a number of really important trends, right? So technology in general, AI, or data-driven products. And there is another trend which is becoming increasingly important, which is ESG. I know that the purpose of NASDAQ is to promote economic progress for all, right? How does that relate to ESG, or what are the ESG policies in NASDAQ?
Sure. So NASDAQ, at our heart, we are an exchange, right? We love all of these companies circling our head right now. We love them all equally, right? They are all, I am a mother, I have children. I love all the children equally. We love all of our listed companies equally. We love all of our broker-dealer clients like Nomad equally, because companies are allowing diversification and investment. Firms like Nomad and your competitors around the world are allowing access for retail investors into the market. We believe strongly in healthy competition and not showing any favoritism. So NASDAQ's not in the market to become a ratings agency, right? Or to dictate to our companies what sustainability is and how they should be playing a role in sustainability. But where we do a really good job at NASDAQ as an exchange is providing the venue to have transparency. And just like we do that with the capital markets and creating an electronic system where everyone can participate fairly from around the world into the market on our exchange to get price transparency and transparency through our data on what's actually happening in the market, we believe in that same philosophy for ESG. So what does that mean? What are we doing? So NASDAQ actually provides a product called the NASDAQ Sustainable Bond Network. And what that does is we actually provide investors with a portal and API access to information on which bonds are green. So if you're interested in investing in green bonds, if that's something that is a mandate for you or important to you, you can come to NASDAQ to find out which fixed income, which bonds are sustainable by looking into this portal and getting access to transparent information, right? We've recently invested in a company called Puro Earth, which is actually carbon removal credits. So as we look at alternative assets and holding alternative assets and some of the controversy historically around greenwashing, how can we provide more transparent information that is trustworthy and true? And the idea of carbon removal credits and offset credits is something that we think is very interesting and creates another alternative asset that both retail and corporates as well as asset managers could potentially invest in. Then you look at our corporate business, right? We don't want to mandate to corporates if they should be sustainable or not and what that path looks like for them. Businesses are very diverse, very different, right? That's not NASDAQ's position to put a mandate on that. But what we can do is we can allow technology we can give them technology to allow them to disclose and provide information out to their shareholders and to the street on what they are doing for sustainability. Right? So creating that forum and that technology platform for them to disclose what they want to disclose, when they want to disclose. And then the same aspect, we also have analysts that can help those corporates access investors that are interested in firms that are focusing on sustainability. So it's really a hub of access and transparency that NASDAQ provides for sustainability. When a company and a corporate is ready to get there, when an investor becomes interested, we can be the place where you can get trustworthy, reliable, transparent information.
That's great.
Yeah, all right. So on this note, we end this special episode of NomadCast. I'm sure all of our listeners learned something today, so thank you very much, Brandis. And for our listeners, don't forget to follow Nomad on social media to make sure you never miss any of our content. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandis.
Thank you, guys.